Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, I'm joined by Gary Preisser, managing partner of Stonebriar Wealth Advisors and a financial planning professional with more than 23 years of experience helping individuals, retirees, entrepreneurs, and business owners preserve and grow their wealth. Throughout his career, Gary has developed a unique perspective on financial planning that challenges much of the conventional wisdom surrounding investing and wealth management. He is also the creator of Cash Flow Clock, a framework that has become central to his approach to helping families and business owners manage wealth with greater clarity and confidence. As Stonebriar Wealth Advisors, Gary helps clients navigate everything from wealth accumulation and retirement planning to tax efficiency, income stability, and legacy planning. He is also the author of multiple books and has dedicated his career to helping families make more informed financial decisions and align their wealth with their long-term goals. In this conversation, we'll discuss Gary's journey into wealth management, the philosophy that shapes his approach to financial planning, and the lessons he's learned after decades of helping families build and steward wealth. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get this going, So, Gary, before we dive into Stonebriar and financial planning, can you give us a little bit of a background on your journey and how do you find your way into wealth management over 20 years?
Yeah, it's not something that I set out to do initially. I started working for a tax preparation firm, a CPA firm, back in the day. And that was kind of the first introduction I had to the disconnect between how people think about their money and how their money actually works.
Yeah.
I saw too many clients that were super excited that they got a $10,000 tax refund without considering that that meant that they had loaned money to the government interest-free.
Right. Yeah.
And they were happy about it. They were thrilled that they got this tax refund and then immediately would go out and blow it. And so I could see that people didn't understand how money worked for them or could work for them. Then I got more into small business consulting and helping those small business owners understand the metrics that they should be considering as they are making decisions that would affect them and their families for generations. What information should they be using? How should they educate themselves? How should they manage a real plan for their business and for their family? And how do they know where to adjust, when and how to adjust that? And then as I shifted into personal wealth management and financial planning, I was actually pretty shocked at how different it was. Because from my view, from my experience, especially with a small business, but also for individual households, every decision that we make from a financial standpoint, where we live, where we work, how many kids we have, where those kids go to school, where we eat, where we vacation, everything comes down to cash flow. And yet when it comes to personal finance and investments, we get this risk questionnaire passed across the table with questions that don't make any sense to anyone that determines it asks about how you feel about volatility. And then based on those answers, you get placed in these generic portfolios based on your age and this risk profile, and it doesn't have any real relevance to your unique financial situation. And so that's one of the things that really struck me as I got into this industry, and I've been working hard to figure out better ways to address that issue.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're doing amazing things. And, so was there a situation where it occurred to you oh, I didn't even know a lot of these things. There's got to be people who don't understand it as well. So maybe I can do something to help them out. Was there a situation where it came about that happened?
I saw it so many times.
Yeah.
And one of the big issues that I see is prospective clients would come to me and they would like to dangle that little carrot, right?
Yeah.
And they say, well, what if I gave you $50,000 to manage? Or maybe it was a $5 million, depending on the size of the client, right? I'm going to give you a piece and see how you do. What would you do with it? Where would you put it? And early in my career, I made the mistake of trying to answer that question. Well, we got this and we got this. We got all these products, right? All these allocations, all these models. So great.
Yes.
But the only way to answer that question is by asking, what is the money for? What's the purpose of the money? Because assets are not trophies. I see that in our industry, we look at accumulation, growth, net worth, balances. This is the purpose. No, it's not. Assets are tools.
Yes.
Their only value is in how they can add value to our lives by being utilized. And so if I can understand the purpose of the money, then I understand the timing. I understand when that money needs to be available, not just to grow, but to function.
Yes.
And one example I use is if you need $25,000 in 6 months for whatever reason, vacation, a car, 529 plan, wedding, whatever it is, Well, I'm not going to put that money in Bitcoin. I'm not
Right.
going to put it in SpaceX. I'm not going to put it in the market, but I also can't put it in a 7-month CD.
Mm,
Those first three have a lot of volatility. The last one doesn't have any volatility, but it's not going to function because there's no liquidity.
right.
So we have to understand the purpose for the money. The purpose determines the timing. Once we know the timing, then we can design a customized plan that actually functions for each individual client.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, because you've said, real risk isn't, market volatility, right? Needing money at the wrong time. So I think you're absolutely right because there are a lot of people who say they have all these assets, but at the same time they need their money and they can't go and extract that money at any point, right? It's a little bit more difficult.
Well, and I think it's for our industry, we look at duration of time. We run
Yeah.
Monte Carlo simulations and projections and say, if you live this long and you get this average rate of return, then you have this percentage possibility of not running out of money. But life is not lived in durations of time. It's lived in moments,
Yeah.
moments when you need that money. And timing is so critical. We don't really account for it in our industry nearly as well as we need to.
Mm-hmm.
I played college baseball. I know you played
Yeah.
college athletics as well. And one thing that I learned is you can have the absolute perfect baseball swing, but
Yes.
if you're late by a fraction of a second, that's the difference between a home run and a double play ground out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Timing makes all the difference in the world, and yet we don't bother to account for it in our industry
Yes.
because we're so worried about scale and standardization, and we're going to put everyone in these buckets to make it easier to manage instead of taking the time to ask, what's the purpose for the money? When are you going to need the money? And that really determines the risk. We lump risk and volatility together as if they're the same things, but they're not. Volatility is the movement in the market, up, down,
Right.
sideways, whatever that is. But the only time that really becomes risk is when that volatility collides with a cash flow need.
Mm-hmm.
When you have to sell out of that investment because you need to go on vacation, you got an emergency for the kids, whatever that is, that's when risk comes into play. And so if we understand purpose and timing better for each client, then we can design an allocation, we can design a portfolio, we can design a structure that actually limits, or in some cases, actually eliminates risk. Doesn't eliminate
Right.
volatility,
Yes.
but it reduces the risk that client could experience because of the volatility.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's not necessarily that you're predicting the market, right? It's more just
Absolutely not. I'm
right.
not
Right.
predicting the
Exactly.
market in
Which
any way,
would
shape,
be
or form.
amazing. Yeah. We're gonna have to talk more after this.
Don't get me in trouble, Dylan. Come on
Yeah.
now. It's got to pass through compliance.
Yes, exactly. No, it's more along the lines of just is limiting the risk, like you said.
Well, and that's the key. The market goes up, the market goes down. Volatility's never been a problem over the long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that volatility becomes so risky, so
Yes.
dangerous, is because that person needs that money at that time.
Mm.
And if we don't understand when they're going to need the money, when
Yeah.
our clients are going to need the money, then there's no way that their allocation, that their plan can actually function as efficiently as it should and as it needs to.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, totally understand. It's great what you guys are doing for families, because today you're the managing partner of Stonebriar Wealth Advisors. What was the vision behind the firm and what did you feel was missing from the traditional wealth management model? Because I know you talked a little bit about this, saw so many times, but what was kind of what do you feel like was missing?
My partner Shay and I, we worked together for a firm in Florida for a while, and we've worked for various firms across our careers. What happens in the industry typically is that we start with products. We start
Mm.
with allocations,
Yeah.
usually based on that risk questionnaire that we talked about.
Yes.
And then based on that allocation, we say, you should be able to do these things based on the amount of money that you have and the average rate of return that we expect. That is
Yes.
completely backwards. Because what it should start with, what we should always start with, is what do you want to do? What is your purpose? And then create a plan that actually supports that,
Got it.
allows you to do the things that you want to do. And unfortunately, our industry has not been designed, at least recently, over the last really 40, 50 years. It has gravitated from or moved from helping individual families across the kitchen table back in the day to now it's just you're just a number. You're a
Hmm.
risk classification, you're an
Exactly.
age, and then everybody gets in the same bucket. We get in these target funds that shift automatically. But it's fascinating to me that people are so different.
Hmm.
So different. Even if you're talking about two 65-year-olds, okay? They both have Social Security income of $4,000, and they both have expenses of, let's say, $6,000 a month. But one of those 65-year-olds is still working, and when they retire, they're going to have a pension of $3,000 a month. They're going to have more income than their expenses.
Right.
The other one is retired. They don't have a pension. They are in completely different financial situations from a cash flow standpoint. And yet, if they answer their risk questionnaire similarly, they're going to end up in exactly the same portfolio.
Yes.
And there's no way that can function efficiently.
Right.
So there is a better way to do it. And it's by starting with purpose and timing. And then the allocation just becomes so much more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of considering all of the options that are out there, all of the products that are available, or unfortunately, the ones that are going to give us the most commission, which is unfortunate, but it happens.
Yes.
We can consider what is the best tool for the job, for each specific job, not for the entire portfolio, but for specific portions of the portfolio.
Mm.
And so Shay and I really believe that purpose-based wealth planning is the only way to go, and it allows us to create much more efficient outcomes for our clients than we otherwise would be able to do.
Right. Yeah. I think this is exactly what everybody needs, and this people need to find advisors like yourselves, because of the fact that it's not a one size fits all. And these large firms are exactly doing that. They're just putting you into the bucket and just another number, like you said. But to get the most out of your wealth, you need to have a tailored plan for the individual.
Absolutely. Because one of the issues that I have with the generic plans is, how do you know when to adjust them? Do you adjust the allocation because you're a year older?
Yeah.
Or because you feel differently about the market? That's not a good, solid plan.
Yes.
By focusing on purpose, then our measuring stick is not average rates of return. It's not even positive alpha, which is extremely important,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not important enough. What it is alignment to purpose.
Yes.
When as your purpose evolves, then your plan needs to evolve. It doesn't matter what your age. This applies to anybody at any age. You're in a very unique, you got 5 kids under the age of 11.
Yeah.
You're in a very different situation than that 65-year-old. And you will not be in this situation forever. We were talking about that beforehand, right? This will not last forever. As your needs change, as your purpose evolves, then your plan needs to evolve to stay aligned. I joke that at Stonebriar, we create perfect financial plans.
Yes.
If we know when our clients are going to die, and we know everything's going to happen to them and the market and tax code between now and then, right? That never happens.
Of course.
What is much more likely is that we want to be like that Apollo moon mission that was off track 99% of the time, but was constantly being adjusted so that it stayed as closely aligned to purpose as possible. And so it had the best chance of arriving at the destination that they actually wanted to end up at.
Right. Yeah. Get them back on track as best as possible.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I love that, Gary. So, one of the concepts, and I'm sure this is kind of what you're explaining, is that you're best known for is the cash flow clock, right? So what is that, and why do you believe it changes the way people should think about investing in financial planning?
Cash flow clock is something that we've developed at Stonebriar because we see those generic portfolios that look like a pie, right?
Yes.
And they divide it up. They put different segments. You got some bonds and some international and some small, mid, and large cap. And it's all together in kind of one pot that's diversified, quote unquote. But it's static. It doesn't really mean anything. It's not functional. You pull money out of your bonds for income. Guess what happens? Everything gets rebalanced to a percentage. So you're actually selling out of your large cap growth stocks to fund your short-term income. Now, if the market is up 10%, that might be okay. But if the market just dropped 30, the last thing you want to do is sell out of your large cap growth stocks just to rebalance your generic portfolio. And so we want to have not just an allocation, we want to have an actual living plan that moves through time. And so that's why we use the concept of a clock. Not only is it circular like a pie, but it actually functions. We can see how it evolves and how it changes through time. But it's a very simple concept. The money that you're going to need to utilize in the next 5 or even 10 years cannot be exposed to volatility. That's where risk is created, right? If it's exposed to too much volatility, you need the money, the market's down, you have to sell out of desperation. We want to take that out of the equation. We want to utilize money markets or sometimes fixed index annuities or CDs or these types of assets that have no volatility to fund those 10 years of income. Now, for retirees, that could be a really big deal because they may be living off of this. In your
Yes.
case, you have your income and other sources of cash flow, but you still need an emergency fund, right? You still need
Yes.
something to save for education, for weddings, and those types of things that you have on the horizon. So it applies to anyone in any situation. Once we get past 10 years, though, that's where volatility is no longer a threat, it's an opportunity. That's
Mm-hmm.
our best chance to grow. And so we call that the volatility zone. We don't have to worry about hedging. We don't have to worry about putting some money into the target fund where some is bonds, some is stock. We can say your job, this portion of the portfolio, your only role is to grow as efficiently as possible. We
Yes.
want to outperform the market based on the amount of volatility we're taking. We want to have positive alpha, but I'm not worried about income. I'm not worried about emergency fund. I just worry about long-term growth.
Mm-hmm.
By by dividing the portfolio into those different roles, we can be so much more efficient. And the
Yes.
reality is that want you to we want you to utilize your money, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
there for. As money is spent from the lazy or safe zones, then we replenish from the volatility zone. So we always have that buffer in place. But
Right.
the key to the cash flow clock is that it doesn't happen automatically. It's not an automatic rebalance. These assets are segregated from each other so that we're making shifts strategically, not automatically. We make those shifts when the market is up. We never have to make them when the market is down, which allows us to reduce or, like I said, even potentially eliminate the volatility risk that most clients are exposed to.
Right. I think that is exactly the misconception of understanding, that there are portions of your investments, right, of your portfolio, is that people think that they're just putting it to the long-term, retirement fund and, they just have to get to 62. They have to get to 65, whenever they can retire and they can finally start pulling that money. But there are different portions. You can use it for different areas and people like you can help them understand that. But a lot of the, people who are working hard every day are thinking they're like, man, I'm not going to be able to spend any of this money or do anything with it, for however long, but there's ways to do it, right?
Well, and it's fascinating to me that I spend most of my time encouraging my clients to spend their money or spend more of their money,
Yes.
especially with the boomer generation. And
Right.
I love you guys to death. I appreciate what you're doing. You have saved your entire life. And I use the comparison of Aesop's fable, the grasshopper and the ants, right?
Yeah.
The ants
Uh-huh.
save for the winter. They save their food, and my clients really respond to those ants. They're very industrious. But what they forget is that at the end of the fable, the ants ate the food. They didn't
Yes.
just look at it. They didn't just admire it. They didn't brag about it. They used the food for its purpose. And I think we have to understand that assets, again, are tools. Their value is in how they are being utilized. We shouldn't be afraid to use our assets, especially for those things that add value. Now, there's extremes there, and I've seen too many people that spend too much and they run out of money. That is an issue. I don't mean to downplay that.
Right.
But for most of the people that are coming into my office, that's not the issue. The issue is how do we utilize these assets to add value to their lives and to the lives of their family and their community. And that, I tell you what, it's so much more enjoyable than just looking at a sheet and saying, "Oh, you got 5% rate of return this year."
Yes.
Um, our year to date is closer to. I was just meeting with a client whose year to date is up. We're up 52%. Now that's a
Wow.
very enjoyable conversation.
Yes.
Let me be honest about it. But what I loved most about that conversation is that she told me that they spent a month in Europe. And
Hmm.
this is someone who is scared to death of running out of money.
Yes.
And when she came back, she actually used Delta One, probably the first time in her life. And if she was nervous about it, but what a difference that made.
Yeah.
And then when I showed you can do that. That added value to your life. You didn't need to
Yes.
just do it just for the sake of it, but it
Hmm.
added value. It made that experience so much more meaningful, so much more enjoyable. And that's just one example, but it's those little things, it's those moments that really make the difference. And our assets are there, or should be there to support those moments.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to look back on your life and be like, yeah, I spent my whole life saving, and like I didn't actually live those for those moments? Like that's what it's for, is for you to have experiences, right?
Exactly right.
Yes, no, you're spot on. I love that you guys are doing this. So, obviously you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, right? And so, which is a lot of our listeners. So, what are some of the biggest financial blind spots you see successful people develop, as they're building wealth?
One of the big problems, and I'm a business owner myself, so I
Yeah.
understand it. Your business becomes your portfolio. It becomes the only asset that you have. And when we talk about diversification, I have a big issue with the term diversification from an investment standpoint, because most of the diversification that I see happen in other portfolios is just duplication. It's just more and more and more investments that all act the same. So there's really no true diversification. Um, Now, true diversification means that you have assets that perform differently under different circumstances. The problem with being a business owner when all of your eggs are in that one basket, and I appreciate you're betting on yourself, you're putting the work into it. It's very important, but we want to make sure that we can't, well, we need to be concerned about taking all of the revenue from that business and just putting it back into the business instead of paying yourself and being able to diversify those assets with other types of investments, whether that's real estate, whether that's stocks, whatever that may be, so that you're not solely dependent on the business. We've all read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We all
Yes.
understand the cash flow quadrant. All of those things are so important, but we kind of ignore them because we got those blinders on and we're just trying to survive. And I appreciate that very much. It's the day-to-day struggle. But if we can take a step back and realize there's a lot of value that comes from owning a business, especially if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, right? And I
Hmm.
appreciate that about business owners. But we also need to understand that the purpose of the business is to provide for your family, to provide for those moments, to provide for those values. And it's okay to harvest your hard work
Yes.
with taking that cash out and diversifying that investment, so all of those eggs are not in that one basket.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be a balance, right? I mean, obviously, you want to invest back into your company and make it grow as fast as possible. But at the same time, you still got to think about yourself and your family. So it is a balance.
Because you can't, it's like being on the plane ride where they say if the oxygen masks drop, you got to put it on yourself before you put it on your child.
Yes.
I know
Right.
the impulse would be to put it on your child first, but you've got to be there to support your business and to support your children and support your family. And if you don't have that safety net, that the cash flow clock set up properly, so that liquidity is available, because liquidity becomes such a concern for business owners. You don't have that consistent paycheck. You have good months, you have bad months, you have good years, you have bad years, and you have to figure out a way to stabilize that, because life doesn't always follow in those wild extremes. The other thing that we need to understand is how taxes affect us.
Yes.
Taxes affect us in so many different ways. And one of the benefits of being a business owner and a real estate investor, especially, is the tax code is full of opportunities to
Mm.
reduce taxes.
Right.
The problem that I see with that is too often we look at tax planning, or the ultimate goal for taxes is to reduce your taxes for last year.
Yes.
It's not what it's about. It's about reducing your overall tax liability, not for last year, but throughout your lifetime, as well as throughout the duration of your estate. So I see way too many, especially business owners, that don't show a lot of income, but then they're putting money into a traditional IRA account or a
Yes.
traditional 401k. They're deferring taxes. If you're in the 12% tax bracket, please, I want you to pay as much tax as possible at 12%, so that you can avoid paying tax at 22 or 24 or 32% down the road.
Yes.
If you're in the 12%, you shouldn't be deferring taxes. You should actually be putting more money into Roth IRA or Roth
Hmm.
401k. Let that money grow tax free. So that's just one example of how taxes affect every aspect of our lives. And again, it's a matter of timing,
Yes.
because if you have $1 million that you recognize in income in 1 year, you're going to pay a much higher tax rate than if you spread it out over 10 years.
Yes.
So we need to look at the timing of the taxes, and business owners have that opportunity. But too often, I think they're reacting to taxes instead of being proactive and really creating a plan for themselves.
Right. Yeah. No. Gary, I can tell why you're so successful and why a lot of people like working with you, because I think you explain it in simpler terms, right? And the analogies you use, baseball, the ants, I love it, and sports backgrounds, of course, that always hits with me. But at the same time, you can really spell it out for people for them to understand. And, of course, you've written books, built systems, and advised families for decades. And majority of what we've talked about is money. But what's the biggest lesson you've learned about money that has nothing to do with money?
I think the biggest thing is the happiest clients are not the ones with the most money. It is understanding the purpose. And there's so many, you're right, you can get into the technical aspects of managing money, and you can look at Sharpe ratios, and you can look at all of these different metrics, right, that are related to money management, to performance. You can look at moving averages, all of these things, we can get bogged down in that. But if we don't take a step back and understand the purpose of the money, one of the most influential books that I've ever written, most influential TED Talk I've ever watched was Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And that had nothing, it wasn't focused on money in any way, shape, or form. It's focused on life. And I think that's what this is all about. Money is here to support life, support our lives, not just life in general, but our lives, our specific lives. And so we've got to start with why. The why determines the when. In our case, the when determines how and the what, right? If we don't start with that, then nothing's going to be able to fulfill the point in all of this. And I hate to see so many people that have done a great job of accumulating assets, but they never feel secure. They never feel like they've actually accomplished anything. Because if your only focus is growth and accumulation, well, that finish line, you never arrive at that finish line. It's
Right.
always moving further ahead because there's always somebody with more. It's not like you ever win anything. But if we can align our assets to purpose, now we not only can arrive at the final destination, whatever that might look like, but the journey along the way is so much more meaningful and so much more effective for all of us.
You're absolutely right. I think a lot of, especially in the US, we get caught up in living to work, right, instead of working to live. And it's a good reminder that you're doing and helping these people understand that. So, if you sat down with a business owner or entrepreneur listening to the show today, Gary, what's a financial planning principle you wish more people understood earlier in their journey?
Don't chase wealth. Don't chase success, design it. Because it's different for every person. Okay. We can't put everyone in a bucket and say, this is what success means for you. And so when you're chasing the success of others, you're never going to be fulfilled as much as you could or should be for yourself. I was sitting down with a couple, clients, it's been several months now. And I told them, again, you should spend more money. You can afford to travel way more than you currently are. And her face just lit up like the 4th of July. She was so excited to travel. She had a whole list. You could tell she's ready to check off everything on her bucket list. And I think he actually growled at me. He scowled. He could tell that he did not want to travel anywhere. He did not want to leave his house for any reason. He was mad that he was in my office. He did not want to even have this conversation. Two different people. I didn't get into the marriage counseling at that point in time. That's their business.
Yeah.
But success is different for everyone. I think too often, especially as you start a business, you start the business with the idea of being able to continue the business, which is very important. But if we don't design it based on our purpose and our definition of success, then there's no way that we're going to get to that destination as efficiently as we could otherwise. If we aim at nothing, then we hit it. And I know that business owners aren't really aiming at nothing, but they're not aiming specifically enough.
Yes.
Again, going back to baseball, and we talked about, I do Spartan races. You got a spear throw. We always hear aim small, miss small.
Yes.
If you aim more specifically, then you're going to maybe miss a little bit, but you're going to be a lot closer to that destination rather than saying, well, I'm just going to throw it in this general vicinity. So we want to be more specific. We want to be intentional about everything that we do. Every dollar of revenue that business gets should have a purpose. Is that to be reused, reinvested into marketing? Does it go into inventory? Does it go into long-term capital for acquisitions? Does it go to income to support your family? If we don't design that plan, it's not going to function as efficiently as it needs to do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this is probably not a great term, but don't be lazy with it, right? Just be specific.
Don't be reactive. Don't trust the default. We
Yeah.
cannot rely on other people or other systems to just, that rising tide floats all the boats. That's not
Yeah.
enough.
Yes.
Especially if you're a business owner, you're that type of personality that demands the best, right? You want something more than just that 9 to 5 job. So demand that from yourself. Start with that intentionality. Don't just let it happen to you. Make it
Yes.
happen for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, start with yourself, back to the airplane analogy, right? Start with
Yes.
yourself and everything else around you will fall into place. So, man, Gary, I really love this. This has been amazing getting to speak with you. For those who would like to learn more about Stonebriar Wealth Advisors and connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Our website is stonebriarwealthadvisors.com. You can reach us there. We've got a couple of different ebooks, one on the cash flow clock, one on what we call the essence of wealth. A lot of our clients said, I wish I met you 20 years ago, or
Yes.
they say, could you teach my kids these concepts? And so we wrote that for that specific purpose. And one that I think is really kind of the fastest and easiest one, especially for your busy listeners, is the differentiators of wealth. 5 different things that really make the biggest difference that most advisors and most clients are not aware of. They're not utilizing in their portfolio that can make the biggest difference. That's the name. So look at the website, check out the website, but also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to business owners that are working so hard to be successful and figure out ways to help them do that more efficiently.
Incredible, Gary. Yeah, I'll make sure that those are all in the show notes and make it a little bit easier for the listeners and so they can connect with you and make sure they're getting their hands on all these amazing tools. So, again, Gary, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate you spending time with me and the listeners.
Thank you, Dylan.